ABSL Summit. Transform to thrive.
Welcome, everybody. It's really a great honor to be here together. I think this is my 10th, at least, moment when I am joining together with a whole team ABSL Summit. So amazing moment. So let's discuss a little bit about the future, how we should actually act and how we should react in the centers, but not only. So let me start with two important driving forces. One of them is technology, and this is where I would like to ask Wilmer about the technology that is really bringing the next level of disruption. How is this impacting companies, and how companies invest in the business sector from this perspective? And finally, but this is, I believe, important point as well, we discuss AI. AI is very easy to be used by the business. So does this mean that we do not need any longer technology teams?
Well, yes. As a technical CTO who spent most of my life in the consumer goods industry for over 20 years, this is a topic that's very close to my heart, especially the last point that you made. And I feel that getting the right balance between the business priorities and the technology side of it is really imperative. It's always good to have the business pushing us forward, and it keeps the technical teams a little bit in check in the context of always realizing that the license to operate in technology within a business context is delivering business value at the end of the day. So this has been tested, I think, a little bit more over the last couple of waves that we have experienced in the context of cloud, also more recently in the data and analytics space. So I think overall it's a healthy thing. The healthy level of friction is good to foster, focus on the healthy part of it, which is sometimes tricky to maintain. And it keeps pushing and challenging the technical teams. But on the other side of it, I think it's also important to highlight the fact that with AI, and we've heard quite a lot about that earlier, I'm sure, getting it right with AI requires a whole new level of technical capabilities as well. So the technical teams have an important role to play, as they've always had. But it's important for the technical teams to then focus on where is it that they can make the biggest impact. And I think there's two areas where I like to highlight. One of them is ethical AI and getting the right governance frameworks in place. I think we always have a bias in the technical side to action and to get involved with deploying new tools and doing things. But in this space, it's important to make sure that we get it right as well up front. And we focused a lot on that actually at BAT recently. Even sometimes we get challenged why we're not moving fast enough, but sometimes it takes a bit of a pause to then be able to deploy things faster. So this is something that I think technical teams have a big role to play in the sense of understanding how these models are trained, how data is secure. But also on the other side is important to recognize how this field is evolving at a pace that's unlike anything we've seen for quite a while. So I think, you know, again, the bias of technical teams is often to just say, we'll build our own things, we'll do our own. And I think there's a shift in this wave of AI technologies where it's more about how do we collaborate within the broader ecosystem rather than kind of going it alone and building capabilities. I think there's a bit of that as well. But more importantly for organizations is, you know, how do you plug in to the ecosystem of innovation happening in this space?
Thank you. So collaboration is the new word which we should remember. Thank you very much. The second force, which I believe is important, and this is visible even from the COVID time, it is the way how we are using the offices, how we actually collaborate together. So there is a huge change in the workplace and workforce transformation. I would say, but please comment, people are not so much willing to come to the office in some cases. Perhaps you can comment whether it is true. Secondly, my question would be, do we really need still physical offices? Do we need an office in Poland, for example? Or can we be fully let's say, distributed and have a distributed teams working together? Sorry, Mark, if you could answer.
Oh, thank you. And just before I answer that question, I just wanted to say thank you to a previous speaker, Rakesh, who travelled from the UK. Now, having travelled from Edinburgh in Scotland, I'm the one that normally has to apologise for the weather. So he's saved me the trouble there, so thank you, Rakesh. And back to the serious point of your question. So I'd probably answer that in two different dimensions. So what we are seeing overwhelmingly, we have around about 40,000 client organizations that we do work for around the world. And the predominant theme and pattern that we are seeing is that, and this has been a hot debate since COVID, but the predominant theme that we are seeing is a move to return to the office, not in the same way as it was pre-COVID, the kind of, turning up Monday to Friday, but it's more thoughtful and it's more deliberate about the type of work that would be undertaken when actually in that physical space, and really focusing on that importance of human connection and social connection. But of course, before we even get to creating vibrant, exciting offices with energy, we need to make sure, and I think this is a really important point, and I was really pleased to hear the previous panel discussions emphasize the focus of people. Because of course, digital is super important as a tool to instruct and advise and guide the population who can turn that information into insight and can then make decisions. But before we get there, we have to make sure that these built environments are fully inclusive. And given the fact that this is a topic that's particularly close to my heart, I'm the co-sponsor globally of our employee resource group, which oversees abilities and looks to raise awareness for abilities and disabilities. And 15% of the working population have a disability of some description. And you don't really think about this when you think about offices, how accessible they are in overcoming those challenges. So really delighted that I should have mentioned that our second headquarters in ISS is in Warsaw. The first headquarters we've had has been in Copenhagen for the last 120 years, but our second HQ is in Warsaw. And that's gone through an accessibility assessment study, and it came out with top marks as a platinum premises, which makes it far more inviting for people. But 15% is a big number. With those people with disabilities, it makes it far more accessible. So we're really very proud of that. I will probably hand back the mic before I go into. I'll come back to digital in the interest of time.
Okay, so Mark, you're a strong believer in the office. Perhaps there is a space for the discussion during the break. So really, everybody is welcome to challenge Mark. Let me go now to Anna. Anna, you are really veteran, like I am, during this summits, yeah? So let me ask you a question, which I think is fundamental for this debate, because we saw the report, which was semi-optimistic, semi-plus optimistic, let me say like this. But from your perspective, and let me be here pretty, I would say, again, provocative again, are we at the break-even for the sector? Is our success sustainable? And what kind of opportunities and challenges do you see?
Thank you. I think it's quite tricky to ask me that question when people just seen the report. So I won't have any data to prove that it's different than in the report. But my sense, as I am a veteran, as you kindly said, is that we are starting to be at the peak. And we are starting to be at the peak from the number of FTE perspective, definitely. Why do I say so? When I observe my competitors, new colleagues who are entering into the market, definitely their centers are smaller. Definitely they are more focused on these knowledge-driven roles. So it's natural that it tells me that is the future of the sector, because also within my company, we are 6 years on the market. We have started from the white piece of paper, from the business case, and we are not so massive as colleagues that started 15, 20 years ago, and we already put our effort into creating a little bit different kind of roles that will cease to exist in the future. So I think we are rather on the plateau. My feeling is that we will be dropping from the FTE perspective, but my hope is, and that is the answer to the next question, that it doesn't mean that we will be less important or less valued or less impactful in the world of our companies. It may even mean that we will be more important. It really depends from us. It's not given as granted. Nothing is given for granted. And answered what are the biggest challenges, I think the biggest challenge and the risk that we have are the leaders. They think that things are granted in this kind of business. It's not. I think why we speak here, definitely there may be at least 5 other conferences where colleagues from Manchester, Bucharest, Bangalore, or I don't know, Kuala Lumpur are having very similar discussions, because everybody knows that the cake is going to be a little bit smaller and smaller, and everybody is transforming to thrive. So I think that the challenge is the leaders who think that things will not change and are not acting proactively, because they think 1 year ahead or 2 years ahead. So that's the biggest risk and challenges that we see. The second is the changing the culture of our companies and colleagues and our staff members, because for the last 5 years, we were growing like crazy everywhere, and people were very used to the very quick promotions, very quick career moves without huge effort. I think right now ahead of us, there is a big effort from us as leaders' perspective, but also from people perspective, to adjust to the changing environment and transforming the way they work. And it's a challenge, you know, people like to have things easy. So definitely that's the second challenge. And the third challenge I have, just with 3, is that we sometimes miss the transformation with cost saving. And what I observe still is that we rather have cost-saving exercises, not the real transformations. And it's good and bad. Good because it really doesn't touch us so much. So if we talk about 5-10% of reduction of the headcount, come on, it's nothing. Yes, it's a natural attrition during a year and a half. It doesn't hurt so much. I think everybody can do that. But when we talk about real transformation, I think what you said, the real transformation I have seen was change the way we work from office, work from home. That was a real transformation. And it happened overnight. So we can do it, but there must be circumstances to do that. From opportunities perspective, to be positive, I have quite often guests visiting our office when I start to pitch for the businesses that I want to have in Poland. And definitely there is one theme that people tell me, no matter where they come from, that our people have this can-do attitude. And I think that is something that we have from years, and it's a cultural, that indeed we have this, I can do that. I can do that because I like competition. I can do that because simply we have a little bit risk approach, but definitely that is in place. So that's a foundation. The second, we have a good talent pool on the market, and this talent pool is going to save us, and this talent pool is something that we will base our future on. And the third positive, I would say, is definitely the awareness from our side that we have to be competitive and we have to be first to thrive.
Thank you. And yeah, honestly speaking, I agree what you said. The point which a little bit concerned me from the report was that we moved from the so-called cost attractive location to value to the cost attractive location. Why I still think we should be actually extremely, let's say, attractive value related location. Yeah, and this is where I believe this is a next wave of change which we should look at, yeah? And let me go right now again to Wilmer, because let's discuss a little bit about value proposition and how are the decisions made at the headquarters about selecting the location. So my question is where to shine, how to really build our ecosystem here to be attractive, how the leaders in the headquarters really think about, let's say, future services sector as such, not only in Poland.
Yeah, that's a really good point, as you mentioned earlier, is that shift from cost austerity towards value-driven. And getting that right, especially in the context of the next wave of AI technologies, especially in the context of what we just discussed earlier, in the sense of being more business-driven versus some of these waves in the past. The role here is how do we make sure that whatever service centers or location strategy we have in place is very closely connected to the business. So it's very easy to look at location strategy from a slightly agnostic standpoint and just look at maximizing costs and looking for talent pools and that sort of thing, which is obviously a part of it. But I think a more important part of it, especially as we go towards this more digital transformation side of things, which will be definitely challenged by the technologies around Gen AI and AI in general, I think it's important to get that right. So the ways of working in terms of how these hubs collaborate and connect back into where the business decisions are made, and how they bring to life the business agenda as driven by the business in the central locations is going to become more and more important. I think there's also another element that we see now. There's a level of greenfield, of level playing in the sense of AI. If you look at the amount of investments happening right now in the Middle East, especially given the hardware-related investments they are required in this space in order to train some of these models. So I think that there's a lot up for grabs right now. You will see a bit of a landscape shift, but this is where locations like Poland could really shine and differentiate themselves, which is, there is a proximity to business, both in terms of geolocation, but also, overall ways of working. And this is where, if we look at what we're doing at BAT, is fostering these center of excellence approach that is very much integrated to the business processes, and bringing this to life through, the right level of leadership in these centers as well, and positioning more and more that the differentiator is not just the cost side of it, that as well, but it's all about, how do we drive the business agenda through locations like Poland.
Okay, now I will go to and ask Alina, because we are discussing about value, and actually you are representing the sweet spot to some extent, let's say, because every part of the work which we do is important, but R&D was actually not so much deeply popular in Poland. It started to be popular nowadays, and we bring in more knowledge-intensive workforce to Poland as well. But let me ask you a question. How can we attract highly specialized work to Poland? How actually do you choose a space where to become a leader? And finally, what is needed to secure this space? Because it is not only to bring, but as well to retain, let's say, relevant, yeah?
Thanks. So indeed, the AstraZeneca R&D Center in Poland, this is more than 1,700 of the people working in the purely R&D roles in the big pharma. So you can imagine the scientists, physician, also the data scientists, the mixture of role which supports directly the development process of the product. So this is the global center. And we obviously started with the lower level roles, but but then developed gradually to the roles which really makes the important decision in the drug development process for the whole company. We also have a part in Poland, which is supporting us in the finance services, in the procurement and global business services, which is a couple of hundred of people. So this is the mixture of role, but profile of the site has been the R&D pharma. So I start with a bit of the history because I think there is still something we can leverage today from our first experiences. So the business decision made to invest in Poland into the R&D roles was driven by a couple of factors, but the most important ones were that this was untapped market. So basically we were first in terms of those roles, and this has pros and cons because there were no people with the certain experience at the market, but at the same time there was this role has been very attractive, so we could attract the best talents of the market. So that was one of the reasons. The second was the cost. So at that time, this was significantly cheaper location than the other locations we had in the company. And probably the other one was what was already mentioned, the can-do attitude, which the local part of the company has shown already. So we grown from the about 200 roles to the 3,000 we have right now in Poland over these 12 years. And we use the two strategies to attract our global business to invest in Poland, and I think they are still relevant for today, or might be relevant for some of you as them. One was what we call the stem cells strategy. So as you may know, the stem cells is something which can develop into the different type of cells in your organism. So we called our people the stem cells, and we invested in training in the specific areas, telling, okay, we've got the best from the market, they have the potential, they can develop into the different specialized roles. And it worked. The second strategy we used was what we call try and buy. So it is about building the small business cases of the roles we haven't had in Poland at that time. And giving them for free to our global functions, saying, okay, that's something what we discover can work better than the current process. There's a few people who can do that for you. Try it. If you like it, we can talk about the bigger investment. And again, it worked. And we had a number of the functions or the departments, some of them really big, which has been built based on this small innovation and a kind of a try and buy process, which I think we still can use because in the previous panels, there were a lot of talks about the roles of the future. So think what might be the role of the future and then use the try and buy, and then maybe it will be us in Poland who will attract these new jobs from the company. So this has not changed since we started to build, but what has changed, I think, is that now we are one of the important established organizations within the company, not so cost attractive as we've been at the beginning. So we need to differentiate ourselves and look for the competitive advantage in some other spaces. So one of the strategies we have now is, again, something which has been mentioned a couple of times, building the maturity of the team, capitalizing on the talents you have in the organization. One of the factors we found as the important one in people getting into the higher position is the fact that in Poland, in many centers, we have been developing faster than in the other places. So people had the opportunity to try the different roles in the shortened time, which gives them better enterprise thinking and make them better prepared for the higher roles. And then the last thing I would like to add is that the competitors appeared on the market, and we all know that there was an employee market for a while in Poland. So there is a lot we can and should do to still attract and keep the best people in the company.
Thank you. This is really the, let's say, one of the dimensions how to create value, as you mentioned. But let me come back to Anna with a question about defining the value proposition for the center to remain relevant. And one question which I think we discuss as well is how to define and measure the success of a center, right? So this is one, I think, one of the most tricky points, which always we come back with this discussion, yeah?
So let me start with the second one. Indeed, so far the success criteria we had was number of people. And I think when we read about the company, it always mentions how many people it hires. When you attend the job interview, most probably the first question you receive is how many people have you been managing? Which in the future, in line with our discussions, will not be so relevant. And between us, I was managing a team of, 1,500 colleagues that were doing very similar repetitive work, and it was much simpler than managing 200 colleagues that were doing the innovation and fintech. So I think that the questions from recruitment definitely should change for the future. But I think in order to understand that, you have to understand the business that you run. So indeed, the success criteria need to change. As the number of roles will be dropping, and it's obvious. That's why we do all the digital, all the AI, because we don't want the roles that can be replaced by machines. Yes, I think people are definitely much more willing to do more interesting value-added roles. We have to find the new success criteria. And what is it? Well, I think it really depends in the sector you work in, but it can be the revenue. I think the most obvious, the revenue that you bring. It may be the customer experience. It might be the value and impact you have within the organization. It may be the lack of ability to move your business somewhere else, or more end-to-end approach, or more senior roles, but definitely not number of FTE that you drive. And with that statement, a little bit from my company, so within Startup Chartered, there is something like 38,000 people within the GBS area, and Poland is, I think, 1,300, 1,400. And I started to use our size as a positive, because wherever I go, I say, well, let's test it in Poland. It's a relatively small entity, and we can test it whether it works for Poland. So, by the way, by that we became the laboratory of change, which of course helps me, because then I can have impact for the transformation. That's one of the ways to have impact for transformation. And of course, number of people is equal to number of problems that we have.
But do you remember a question? When you go to the headhunter, what is the first question which is asked to you?
Yes.
How many people you have? How many people you manage,
have,
right?
Yeah. From my perspective, number of people equals number of problems. Less people you have, more value proposition you have, that's better. And looking at the organization that I run, we really focus on high complex, non-operational roles. And the trick is, and the criteria success, I don't know if this is a criteria success, we are not definitely the low-cost location. From cost perspective, we are growing in the very senior roles, really more than 40% of our roles, this is the level of director, in the most expensive areas that currently exist. And of course, my average cost of FTE is growing, but you know what, so what? I bring so much value to the organization that nobody talks about cost in relation to Poland anymore. So I think interesting times, but this finding a niche for yourself and just completely cut the number of people element will help you to thrive and change the environment. And the last thing about changing is, I think from Poland perspective, what do we have? We have very good geopolitical placement. So we are in the perfect place from the hemisphere perspective. We have good talent pool. We have people who have this can-do attitude. And the rest is really up to us. What do we manage to get from the organization? So the role of ours is really to make people aware and find a niche for your products and for your services and for your service that you can deliver to the organization?
You know, I believe that one of the good things is that over the evolution of a sector, many leaders which were actually grew up out of Poland became regional or even global leaders, and we have huge representation here, even at this team which we have here, but as well with the audience. And this is really the team which is driving the change. So this is really important that you can impact as well the things which are to happen in the future, yeah? So this is absolutely critical. Okay, let me now go to Mark, yes. Mark, we discussed in the, let's say, in the backstage, how important, and is this still actually important, the ESG and diversity, equity, and inclusion. How, from your perspective, is this building a value proposition, and how is it differentiating a company itself, not only center, but a company and its ability to transform?
Yes, it's still important for sure. So I think certainly the way that we would view this is there's a social purpose that's connected with an organization that's a large employer of people around the world. There's an increased responsibility. So in ISS, we've got 360,000 employees around the world. Recognize the fact that for many of the people that would join us, they would be categorized as entry-level, unskilled. So there becomes an even stronger impetus to be able to develop skills, competency, different forms of education. So we got behind and put forward a pledge to make sure that over 100,000 of those employees are equipped with a recognizable qualification over a few years. Now that sounds, they're obviously big numbers, but just thinking about the transform to thrive, I certainly from a personal perspective, I'm a product of that ongoing education, the belief, the qualifications, which actually a qualification on its own is great, but you really start to get a compound benefit of that when you start adding to that, and it develops a curiosity. So what we're certainly trying to do around the world is to equip our colleagues with additional qualifications, and it can be all manner of things. From an example in India, we've just unveiled an Education for All program, and that focuses on specifically on those colleagues who were not able to complete their high school education and maybe had to leave in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, who have had a desire to complete and get to 11th and 12th grade. So making that accessible for the 55,000 colleagues in India, it's great from a qualification and education perspective, but also the self-esteem and the confidence that it creates in any of us, and I'm sure most people sitting in this room would credit the education that they've gone through as being a core part of their development. So when we think about ESG, we of course think about the E and the G, but we particularly think about the S, the social mobility and education as an enabler. I would definitely think that a rising tide raises all boats. The more that you do of this, the more you develop that, whether it's an organizational competency, so it's great for the individuals, but from an organizational perspective, it really raises that as well. So yes, is the short answer.
Okay. So just to finish the part where we discuss the value creation, let me come back to Alina, and let me ask you about innovation. How actually shall we bring innovation and create innovative environment? Because there is no transformation, no change without innovation.
So there are three factors which I would mention here. One is the human capital, and there has been a lot of said about the value of people and the collaboration and the usage of the new tools and the technologies which is enabled by people. So I will not repeat that, but one other thing which we haven't talked about is that where this experience and innovation is built outside of your company. So there must be the environment, the ecosystem when the knowledge is being developed. And probably for many of the roles we are representing here in Poland, we already have this environment for sharing. If you look at the biotech industry or the pharma industry, Poland is not at the place when the countries which are in the top innovators. So the number of the biotech companies, the level of the knowledge and the work at the academia, the scientific work, it all matters. Plus, of course, the roles we are building as the industry within the environment. So whatever we can do to influence this ecosystem will pay off, because then people will mingle, get the knowledge from the other sources, and then there where the innovation will be brought into the play. Then two other factors is that one is that for the highly innovative R&D sector, the stability of the legal environment is important because there is a huge investment into the R&D. So the protection of the intellectual property is important, and all the debates which are now going on in Europe about the protection of the exclusivity of the data, this is important factor which will impact us as well, because this will be about the global business investing in Europe versus investing in the United States or Asia, for example, China. And last but not least is the everything which is coming as the new one. So someone said, future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. So whatever we can do to attract these new ideas, the data has the huge potential also in the medicine development.
Okay, since we are approaching the end of the session, so I would like to ask you for a very short summary, how do you see the future of your center in Poland? You can, of course, put this in the broader, let's say, picture of the services, of the business services sector in Poland, but what do you plan to do with your center, with your teams in the near future? So 1 minute per each. So let me start with Mark.
So very quickly, look at it through two dimensions. We have a core business, country business in Poland, which we are very excited about. We also have the second head office in Warsaw that we talked about, as well as we've just recently opened a shared service centre in Gdańsk, and we are inbounding financials there. So as well as that, there was a lot talked about risk and cyber earlier on. So our Information Security Control Centre was opened 3 years ago in Warsaw. So we're really positive. And the point that I really liked from fellow panellists was the importance of making sure that those shared centres are not an island in the host country, that they work very closely together with the core business, both in the host country, Poland, and the other countries as well. And we're starting to see some really nice evidence of that. So we're net very positive.
Thank you. Wilmer?
Well, yes, I think, exciting times ahead, times of change, but times of opportunity. We've got, we'll continue investing in our center in Poland. We've launched a new office not too long ago. I think we've got the right level of talent coming through as well. And I think a point that was mentioned earlier around diversity, I think it's also important in the context of what you just mentioned actually now, of making sure the centers are not an island isolated from the rest of the organization. One of the things that we've done a lot here is injecting talent from across the company. So it's a center that's not just from local resources, but actually bringing the organization into the center has actually fostered the ability to grow it even further. So we continue to invest. Exciting times ahead.
Fantastic. So the same question to you, Alina.
Two things. One is keep investing in our people through the training, development of the capabilities, preparing for the new. And the second thing is that invest in the ecosystem in Poland. So reach out to the external world, collaborate with academia, work with startups, help them to develop further and build this ecosystem which, in our opinion, will give us this return on investment sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much. Ania?
I understood very quickly that I am a little bit left alone with my site. So it's nothing that there is a strategy and there is the location strategy and some people will help me or disturb me. The business case was over and we were left alone. So with all my brave colleagues, we are managing the site for the biggest success of ours and the group. And we have found our niche and we are right now very thoroughly going in line with the strategy that we have, that we invest in high-profile roles, end-to-end among 5 main streams, and it seems to work.
Thank you, and I hope that you actually found this session pretty inspiring. I hope that there will be a lot of space for the discussion in the couloirs. So let me thank our speakers, so Mark Foret, Wilmer Perez, Alina Pszczółkowska, and Anna Urbańska. My name is Agnieszka Kubera.